The Larthak Empire's flagship, the Celestial Hammer, hung in the void above Neuraxis, 9 like a predator eyeing its prey. Lieutenant Cale Thorne stood at the observation deck, hands clasped behind his back, watching as the alien world rotated slowly beneath them. From orbit, it looked deceptively peaceful, a marbled sphere of deep greens and swirling blues, punctuated by patches of what appeared to be violet-hued deserts. Beautiful, isn't it? The voice belonged to Corin, his closest friend since Academy days. Hard to believe something so pretty could be worth starting a war over. Cale's mouth twitched into a half-smile. Resources rarely look ugly from a distance. He gestured toward the planet. Those violet patches? Initial scans show mineral deposits richer than anything we've found in the last 50 years. The Empire's economic ministry is practically foaming at the mouth. And, conveniently, no indigenous civilization to negotiate with, Corin added, leaning against the reinforced glass. Just plants and bugs, according to preliminary reports. Cale nodded, but remained silent. At 32, he was young for his first field command, and the responsibility of leading the 42nd Battalion weighed heavily on him. 10,000 soldiers under his direct command, with Colonel Varric overseeing the entire operation from the flagship. The assignment had come as a surprise, a chance to prove himself, to cement his family's military legacy. Lieutenant Thorne, a communications officer, appeared at his side, saluting crisply. Colonel Varric requests your presence at the final briefing. The deployment has been moved up. We drop in 3 hours. Cale's stomach tightened, but he kept his expression neutral. Acknowledged. Tell the colonel I'll be there shortly. As the officer departed, Corin clapped him on the shoulder. Look at you, the great Lieutenant Thorne, leading us into glory. His tone was light, but his eyes held concern. Just remember what Commander Elson always said at the Academy. Victory without understanding is just delayed defeat, Cale finished. I remember. The briefing room buzzed with activity when Cale arrived. Officers huddled over holographic displays showing topographical maps of their landing zones, while tactical specialists argued about optimal deployment patterns. Colonel Varric stood tall at the center of it all, a veteran of 17 planetary campaigns whose weathered face bore the faded scarring of plasma burns from some long-ago battle. Ah, Lieutenant Thorne. Varric's voice cut through the room like a blade. The man of the hour, ready to write your name in the Empire's books. Ready to complete the mission, sir, Cale replied evenly. Varric's mouth curled into something between a smile and a sneer. Good answer. Diplomacy always was your strong suit. He activated the main display, and a detailed map of their primary landing zone bloomed in the air between them. As I was explaining, we've detected unusual electromagnetic fluctuations in these regions, but nothing our equipment can't handle. Your 42nd will establish our primary forward base here, at the edge of the plateau region. Dr. Sarah Lorne, the expedition's chief xenobiologist, cleared her throat. Colonel, if I might interject, those fluctuations correlate with what appears to be heightened biological activity. I'd recommend caution until we understand. Noted, Dr. Lorne. Varric cut her off with a dismissive wave. But this is a military operation, not a research trip. We secure the area first, study it second. He turned back to Cale. Any questions, Lieutenant? Cale studied the map, noting the proximity of their landing zone to one of the violet mineral deposits. What's our protocol for unexpected indigenous resistance? A ripple of uneasy laughter circled the room. Varric's expression hardened. The preliminary surveys have been clear. There is no intelligent life on Neuraxis 9. Plants, insects, perhaps some small vertebrates. Nothing that poses a threat to Imperial forces. He leaned forward. But to answer your question directly, if anything on that rock tries to stop us, you will eliminate it. Understood. Understood, sir. 3 hours later, the deployment began. Dropships thundered through Neuraxis 9's atmosphere, their hulls glowing red-hot as Cale watched the altimeter numbers spin downward. Around him, the soldiers of the 42nd sat in disciplined silence, checking weapons and adjusting environmental seals on their combat armor. Corin, now Captain Corin Vass of the 3rd Recon Unit, sat across from him, running a diagnostic on his helmet's targeting system. "Hey," he called over the ship's rumbling. "Remember that time on Caldor Prime? When we found that native village, and you convinced Varric not to level it?" Kale nodded. "Different situation. There were people there." "Yeah," Corrin agreed, his expression unreadable behind his helmet's faceplate. "People." The drop ship shuddered as it hit the lower atmosphere, and the pilot's voice crackled over the comm. 30 seconds to touchdown. LZ appears clear. Weather conditions: moderate fog, temperature 22 Celsius, atmosphere composition within acceptable parameters. When the door slid open, Kale was the first one out, boots hitting the alien soil with a soft thud. The air was thick with mist that tasted strangely metallic on his tongue despite the helmet's filtration. All around them, the strange vegetation of Neuraxis. 9 loomed, massive fern-like structures with purple-veined fronds that swayed despite the lack of any discernible wind. The deployment proceeded with military precision. Within an hour, the 42nd had established a perimeter, set up defensive positions, and begun constructing the forward command center. Kale stood at the heart of it all, receiving reports and issuing orders as additional drop ships arrived, disgorging troops and equipment onto the alien soil. "Sir," Lieutenant Muragener approached, her armor already showing a fine coating of the strange, iridescent dust that seemed to permeate the air. "The 3rd Recon is ready to begin their preliminary sweep. Captain Vass is requesting final authorization." Kale activated his comm link. "Corrin, you've got green light. Standard protocol, 3-kilometer radius. Maintain communication every 15 minutes. "Copy that," Corrin's voice replied. "We'll see what's out there." For the next 3 hours, the operation continued without incident. The perimeter expanded, equipment was installed, and the first mineral samples were extracted for analysis. The quiet efficiency of it all almost lulled Kale into a sense of security. Then the first communication came in from Corrin's team, exactly on schedule. "Command, this is 3rd Recon. We've reached the edge of the plateau and are proceeding into the valley. Visibility reduced due to increased fog density. Strange formations here, looks like some kind of biological structures, possibly fungal in nature. Requesting permission to collect samples." "Permission granted," Kale replied, "but maintain safety protocols." "Always do," Corrin responded, his voice slightly distorted by static. "Recon out." 15 minutes passed, then 20. At the 30-minute mark, Kale was already ordering a communication check when Varric's voice cut in from the orbiting flagship. "Lieutenant Thorne, explain why we've lost contact with 3rd Recon." "Attempting to re-establish now, sir," Kale replied, signaling to his communications officer to boost the signal. "Could be interference from the terrain or atmospheric conditions." "Find them," Varric ordered. "Now." Kale assembled a search team immediately, 20 of his best soldiers equipped with enhanced scanning gear. He led them personally, following the transponder signals from 3rd Recon's equipment. The mist grew thicker as they descended into the valley, limiting visibility to less than 10 meters. "Life signs?" Kale asked the scanner operator. "Nothing definitive, sir." "There's interference." The soldier frowned at his equipment. Something's not right with these readings. They found the first piece of evidence 50 meters further on, a standard-issue combat rifle lying abandoned on the purple-tinged soil. There was no blood, no signs of a struggle, just the weapon, as if it had been carefully placed rather than dropped. "Spread out," Kale ordered. "Search pattern alpha." They found the rest of the equipment scattered across the next 100 meters. Helmets, armor pieces, communication devices. All intact, all empty. No bodies, no blood, no signs of violence. Corrin's helmet was the last thing they found, resting atop a strange, pulsating fungal structure that hadn't been there when the recon team passed through. Kale picked it up carefully, examining the interior. Empty, clean, as if Corrin had simply removed it and walked away. "Sir," one of the soldiers called, voice tight with tension, "you need to see this." In a small clearing ahead, they found the intact combat suits of all 12 members of the 3rd Recon team, arranged in a perfect circle. The suits were sealed, standing upright as if still occupied, but when Kale ordered one opened, there was nothing inside. No bodies. Not even ash. "What the hell happened here?" someone whispered. Before Kale could respond, a crackling sound drew their attention. The ground beneath the empty suits was moving, shifting like liquid despite its solid appearance. The search team backed away, weapons raised. "Return to base," Kale ordered, his voice steady despite the cold fear gripping his spine. "Now!" They made it halfway back before the mist around them thickened suddenly, taking on an oily, iridescent quality that clung to their armor. One of the soldiers screamed as the mist seemed to seep through his helmet seals, entering his mouth and nostrils. He collapsed, convulsing, as the others watched in horror. "Help me get him up," Kale shouted, rushing to the fallen man's side. But when they turned him over, his face was already gone, not wounded or damaged, but simply absent, as if erased from existence while the rest of his body remained intact. 3 more soldiers fell before they reached the perimeter, the mist claiming them in similarly impossible ways. By the time Kale led the survivors back into the base, the truth was unavoidable. Neuraxis 9 was not what they had believed it to be. A Deathworld, Dr. Lorne said quietly, examining the corrupted armor under quarantine conditions. "That's what we're dealing with." "Explain," Kale demanded. Lorne's eyes were rimmed with fatigue. She had been analyzing samples since their return, working frantically as more reports of strange occurrences flooded in from other units. A planet where the entire ecosystem functions as a unified defense mechanism. The mist, the fungal structures, even the soil itself, they're all connected, all responding to our presence. "That's impossible," Colonel Varick's holographic image stated flatly from the communication terminal. "Planetary ecosystems don't act with purpose." "This one does," Lorne insisted. "The electromagnetic fluctuations we detected, they're not random. They're communication signals between different biological systems. This planet isn't just alive, Colonel. It's aware." Kale thought of the empty suits arranged in that perfect circle. "And hostile." "Defensive," Lorne corrected. "We're the invaders here. The foreign bodies. The infection from the planet's perspective." Varick's expression hardened. "I didn't authorize this mission to debate the philosophical position of plants, Dr. Lieutenant Thorne. You will continue the operation as planned. Increase security protocols and eliminate any biological threat to our personnel." "Sir," Kale began, choosing his words carefully, "if Dr. Lorne is correct, we may need to reconsider our approach." The 3rd Recon Unit was completely. "Your friend is dead, Lieutenant," Varick cut in coldly. 12 good soldiers are dead. I don't intend to let whatever killed them go unpunished. We have nearly 10,000 troops on that planet. Use them." Over the next 72 hours, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The mist attacks increased in frequency and effectiveness, learning to penetrate even sealed environments. New threats emerged. Swarms of nearly invisible insect-like creatures that burrowed into neural implants and induced hallucinations. Patches of ground that shifted position when not directly observed, trapping unwary soldiers in geographic loops they couldn't escape. Vegetation that emitted spores causing paranoia and violent behavior. The casualty numbers mounted. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. Kale ordered defensive positions established on higher ground, away from the thickest concentrations of mist and fungal growth. He implemented strict buddy systems, forbade removal of armor under any circumstances, and rotated troops frequently to minimize exposure to the planet's influence. None of it was enough. On the 4th day, he found Dr. Lorne in her makeshift laboratory, surrounded by biological samples sealed in containment fields. Her eyes were bloodshot, her uniform stained with unidentifiable fluids. "I need to show you something," she said without preamble, activating a holographic display. "I've been analyzing the structure of the fungal networks we've encountered. Look at this pattern." The display showed a complex, 3-dimensional web of interconnected nodes and filaments. Kale frowned. "What am I looking at?" "A neural network," Lorne said quietly. "Specifically, one that bears a striking resemblance to portions of the human brain. These fungal structures aren't just communication channels. the processing centers. Thinking centers. You're saying the planet has a brain? I'm saying the entire planet functions as a brain-like organ, with different ecosystems serving different cognitive functions. She manipulated the display, zooming out to show a planetary-scale version of the same pattern. And right now, that brain perceives us as a threat and is devising increasingly sophisticated ways to eliminate us. Kale stared at the display, cold realization washing over him. Then we can't win this. Not conventionally. No, Lorne agreed. But there might be another approach. If the planet functions as a cognitive entity, then theoretically, we could communicate with it. Communicate how? It's killing our people. Self-defense, Lorne insisted. It's responding to perceived aggression. But what if we could show it we're not a threat? What if? An explosion rocked the base, cutting her off mid-sentence. Alarms blared as Kale's comm unit lit up with emergency signals. Sir, a panicked voice shouted over the channel. The western perimeter is under attack. The ground itself is rising up, forming these spike-like structures that the transmission cut off. In a burst of static. Stay here, Kale ordered Lorne. Continue your work. Find a way to communicate with this thing. By the time he reached the western perimeter, 30 more soldiers had been lost. The attack was unlike anything in Imperial military records. The very soil had reconfigured itself into crystalline structures that grew at impossible speeds, impaling anyone who came too close. Attempts to destroy the structures only resulted in accelerated growth. Fall back to the central compound, Kale ordered, watching helplessly as another section of ground began to shift. All units fall back now. That night, as what remained of the 42nd huddled in hastily reinforced shelters, Colonel Varric made a rare personal appearance, landing in a heavily armored shuttle that bore scorch marks from atmospheric entry. This situation has become intolerable, Varric announced, striding into the command center with cold fury etched on his face. The Empire does not retreat. The Empire does not surrender, especially not to plants and insects. Sir, Kale began, we've lost nearly 4,000 troops in less than a week. The planet is actively countering every strategy we employ. Then we must be more decisive. Varric activated the central display, bringing up schematics for a device Kale had hoped never to see deployed. The global sterilization device. One detonation will wipe out all biological life within a 500-kilometer radius, enough to secure our primary resource targets. Kale stared at the weapon specs in horror. Colonel, that's a planet killer. Its use was restricted by Imperial edict after what happened on Tellarus. Circumstances change, Lieutenant. The Empire needs these resources. Varric's gaze was unflinching. The GSD is already being prepared for deployment. You will lead the team that places it at the target coordinates. And Dr. Lorne's research? She believes communication might be possible. Dr. Lorne's theories are irrelevant. Varric cut him off. We are soldiers, not diplomats. The Empire sent us to secure this planet, not talk to it. That night, as Kale prepared his team for the GSD deployment, Corrin appeared to him. Not Corrin as he had last seen him, but Corrin as they had been as cadets. Young, unburdened by rank or responsibility. He simply walked into Kale's quarters as if the security systems didn't exist, wearing an academy uniform that had been outdated for years. You're not real, Kale said immediately, reaching for his sidearm. Corrin smiled sadly. No, not in the way you mean. But I'm not a hallucination either, Kale. I'm a message. From what? The planet. From everything this world has absorbed. From those of us who have become part of it. Corrin, or whatever wore his face, sat down on the edge of Kale's bunk. It doesn't understand what you are, not completely. But it's learning. Through us. Through me. Kale kept his weapon trained on the apparition. What happened to you? To the real Corrin. We weren't dissolved or consumed in the way you imagine, the thing said. We were incorporated. Our memories, our knowledge, our essence, all preserved within the planetary consciousness. It had never encountered beings like us before. It was curious. Curious? Kale's voice rose. It killed thousands of my people out of curiosity? No. Corrin's face grew somber. out of self-preservation. Your weapons, your mining equipment, your very presence, all registered as an attack on its systems. It responded the only way it knew how. And now? What does it want now? To understand. To communicate. The apparition gestured toward the window, where the violet-tinged landscape of Neuraxis 9 stretched into the misty distance. There's a place, high on the plateau, to the east. A nexus where the planet's awareness is strongest. Go there. Alone. Before Varric's weapon is deployed. Kale lowered his weapon slightly. Why should I trust you? Because you know I'm right. The thing wearing Corrin's face stood. Because deep down, you've always questioned whether force is the answer. And because you've seen enough death. We all have. When the apparition disappeared, not fading gradually, but simply ceasing to exist between one heartbeat and the next. Kale sat in silence for a long while. Then he accessed Dr. Lorne's latest research findings, reading through her theories about planetary consciousness and potential communication methods. The final entry in her log chilled him. If my hypothesis is correct, direct neural interface might be possible at certain junction points. The risk is significant. Possible complete ego dissolution, but it may be our only chance to establish meaningful contact. I will attempt. The log ended there. When Kale rushed to her laboratory, he found it empty. Only a hastily drawn map remained, marking a location on the eastern plateau, the same place Corrin's apparition had mentioned. By morning, Kale had made his decision. He assigned his executive officer to oversee the GSD deployment preparations, claiming he needed to conduct a final reconnaissance of the target area. Instead, he took a single-person skimmer and headed east, toward the coordinates marked on Lorne's map. The journey was surreal. As he traveled, the mist that had proven so deadly to his troops simply parted before his vehicle. The ground remained stable beneath him, showing none of the fluid-like properties that had swallowed entire squads. It was as if the planet was allowing him passage. The plateau loomed ahead, its surface covered in massive, spiral-shaped growths that pulsed with bioluminescent light. As Kale landed the skimmer and stepped out, he felt a strange pressure in his mind. Not painful, but insistent, like someone trying to whisper directly into his consciousness. At the center of the plateau, he found Dr. Lorne. She sat cross-legged amidst a circle of the pulsating spiral structures, her eyes closed, expression serene. Around her, the ground had formed a depression that cradled her body like a living seat. When Kale approached, her eyes opened, but the gaze that met his was not entirely human. Dr. Lorne, part of me, she replied, her voice overlaid with subtle harmonics that made Kale's skin prickle. Part of it. The boundaries are less defined now. Are you? Still you? She smiled, the expression both familiar and alien. More than I was. Less than I will be. The integration is not complete, but enough for what must be done. She gestured to a space beside her. You need to see, Lieutenant. You need to understand. Understand what? What you're fighting. What you're killing. Her eyes, now flecked with the same violet hue as the planet's strange minerals, fixed on him. The weapon Varric plans to use, it won't just sterilize a region. It will destroy consciousness on a scale you cannot comprehend. Kale remained standing, hand resting on his sidearm. Doctor, if you're still in there, I need you to explain what happened to you. To all the others. We weren't killed, she said. We were translated, converted from individual consciousness to components of a larger awareness. She tapped her temple. Everything that made me Sarah Lorne is still here, still thinking, still feeling. But now I'm also part of something vast, something that's been growing and learning for millions of years. She gestured around them, at the pulsing landscape. This entire planet is a single organism, Kale. Not in the simplistic sense of interconnected ecosystems, but literally one entity. One mind distributed across countless biological systems. And it's been killing my people. Integrating them, she corrected. The ones it could. The ones who didn't fight back too violently. The rest. Yes, it defended itself against them. Kale felt a surge of anger. Defended? It attacked without provocation. It took Corrin, it took you. Did we not fire first? Lauren asked quietly. The moment we landed, we began cutting, drilling, burning, to a unified consciousness that registers as attack. Pain. She stood, moving with an odd, fluid grace that reminded Kale of the way the mist had behaved. I can show you. I can help you see what I've seen. I'm not letting that thing into my head. Then you condemn it to death. Her voice hardened, and all those it has integrated with it, including me, including Corin. Before Kale could respond, his comm unit crackled to life. Colonel Varick's voice, tight with barely controlled rage. Lieutenant Thorne, your executive officer informs me you've abandoned your post. Explain yourself immediately. Kale hesitated, then responded, Sir, I'm investigating a potential alternative solution. Dr. Lorne's research suggests. Dr. Lorne is missing and presumed dead. Varick cut in. And you are perilously close to being charged with desertion. Return to base immediately. The GSD will be deployed within 3 hours, with or without your assistance. As the communication ended, Kale looked at Lorne, or the thing that had once been Lorne. 3 hours. Not enough time to evacuate what remains of your forces, she noted. Varick intends to sacrifice them as well. What? The GSD has a 500-kilometer radius. Your base is within that range. Varick knows this. Cold realization washed over Kale. He's writing us all off. A necessary sacrifice for the Empire. Yes. Lorne extended her hand. Now will you see? The contact, when Kale finally took her hand, was like plunging into an ocean of awareness. His consciousness expanded outward, connecting with a vast neural network of Neuraxis 9. He saw / felt / understood the planet's history. Billions of years of slow, patient growth, the gradual emergence of awareness, the development of a distributed consciousness unlike anything humanity had encountered. He experienced the arrival of the Imperial forces from the planet's perspective, sudden pain as dropped ships scorched its surface, confusion as unknown entities began cutting into it, fear as weapon fire disrupted delicate neural pathways, and finally, the defensive response, absorbing those it could integrate, eliminating those it could not. Most jarringly, he felt Corin's presence, not as a distinct individual, but as a pattern of memories and emotions now woven into the greater tapestry of the planetary mind. Thousands of other absorbed soldiers existed similarly, their experiences and knowledge being processed, understood, incorporated. When Kale's awareness returned to his body, he fell to his knees, gasping. The experience had lasted seconds, but felt like lifetimes. Now you understand, Lorne said softly. I need to stop Varick, Kale managed, struggling to his feet. Need to get our people off-world. There's more, she said. The planet has learned enough from us, from me, from Corin, from all the others, to understand what's happening. It's prepared its own defense against the weapon. What kind of defense? If the GSD is activated, Neuraxis will release a counterpulse. A planetary-scale electromagnetic burst that will disable not just ground forces, but any ship in orbit. Her violet-flecked eyes met his. Everyone will die, Kale. Everyone on both sides. The journey back to base was a blur of urgent planning and desperate calculation. Kale had less than 2 hours to prevent catastrophe on a scale he could barely comprehend. As his skimmer approached the perimeter, he was met by a squad of security officers, weapons drawn. Lieutenant Thorne, the lead officer, announced stiffly, Colonel Varick has ordered your arrest for dereliction of duty and suspected collaboration with xenobiological entities. Kale had expected this. Take me to him, he said calmly. I need to report what I've discovered. The colonel waited in the command center, standing before a holographic display showing the GSD deployment plan. When Kale was brought in, Varick dismissed the guards with a curt gesture. Lieutenant, he said, voice dangerously quiet. You have put me in an extremely difficult position. Sir, we need to abort the mission, Kale began. The planet is. Spare me Dr. Lorne's fantasies. Varick cut him off. I've read her reports. A planetary consciousness? Communication with an ecosystem? These are the delusions of scientists who spent too much time in alien environments. I've seen it, Kale insisted. I've experienced it directly. The consciousness is real, and it's preparing a countermeasure against the GSD that will destroy everything, including our ships in orbit. Varric studied him for a long moment. You were always too soft, Thorn, too willing to see the other side. It made you an interesting officer, but a questionable soldier. He sighed. And now it's made you a liability. Colonel, listen to me. We still have time to evacuate, to find another approach. This planet isn't just a resource. It's a unique life form, possibly the only one of its kind in the galaxy. And that matters because... Varric raised an eyebrow. The Empire sent us for minerals, not scientific curiosities. We're supposed to be better than this, Kale said quietly. The Empire prides itself on civilization, on progress. What's progressive about destroying a sentient being or... Something shifted in Varric's expression, not softening, but recalculating. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that you're right, that this planet is some kind of vast, intelligent entity. Do you know what that would mean, Lieutenant? That we should attempt peaceful contact, negotiation. No, Varric's voice hardened. It would mean we've discovered a weapon. Imagine, a planet that can think, that can adapt to threats, that can absorb and integrate enemy forces. The strategic applications would be incalculable. Kale stared at him in horror. You want to weaponize it? I want to secure it for Imperial research. And I will not be stopped by one soft-hearted lieutenant with delusions of diplomacy. Varric touched a control panel, and the doors slid open to reveal armed guards. Take Lieutenant Thorn to detention. After the GSD deployment, we'll determine the appropriate charges. As the guards moved to seize him, Kale made a desperate gamble. The central plateau, he said quickly, the nexus point of the planetary consciousness. That's where the GSD would be most effective. Varric paused, signaling the guards to wait. Go on. The neural network is densest there. If you target that location, you could neutralize the organism's ability to coordinate its defense response. Kale forced himself to meet Varric's eyes steadily. I've seen it. I can take you there. A long moment of silence stretched between them. Then Varric smiled thinly. Always the tactician, even in defeat. Very well, Lieutenant. You will guide the deployment team to this nexus point. His gaze hardened. But be warned, any attempt at deception will result in immediate execution. Is that clear? Perfectly, sir. The expedition to the plateau was assembled quickly. Varric himself, Kale, and 200 elite troops equipped with the heaviest weapons the Empire could deploy planetside. The GSD, a deceptively small device for its destructive potential, was secured in a reinforced container at the center of their formation. As they approached the plateau, Kale felt the same pressure in his mind that he had experienced earlier, the planet reaching out, attempting contact. This time, however, he sensed a new emotion from the vast consciousness: resignation. Neuraxis, 9 understood what was coming. There, Kale pointed to the circle of spiral structures where he had found Dr. Lorne. That's the nexus point. Varric surveyed the area with cold calculation. Secure a perimeter, he ordered his troops. Weapons hot. Shoot anything that moves. As the soldiers moved into position, Kale noticed that the plateau was eerily still. The pulsing bioluminescence had dimmed. The mist that had been ever-present elsewhere on the planet was absent here. It was as if the consciousness had withdrawn, preparing for the end. Where is Dr. Lorne? Varric asked suddenly. You mentioned encountering her here. Gone, Kale said truthfully. Fully integrated into the planetary system now, I believe. Varric nodded, unsurprised. Prepare the device. He ordered a team of technicians. Standard countdown protocol. 30 minutes to allow for evacuation to safe distance. As the technicians moved forward with the GSD, Kale felt a gentle pressure against his consciousness. Not the alien presence of the planet this time, but a familiar pattern. Corin, or what remained of him, reaching out one last time. A single concept was transmitted. There's another way. And suddenly, Kale understood. The planet wasn't withdrawing in resignation. It was concentrating its awareness here, at the nexus point, preparing not for death, but for communication on a scale it had never attempted before. Colonel, Kale said quietly, There's something you should know before you activate that device. Varric glanced at him impatiently. Make it quick, Lieutenant. We're on a schedule. The planetary consciousness doesn't just absorb individuals, Kale explained. It learns from them, adapts based on their knowledge and experiences. Your point. It's learned about the Empire from the thousands of soldiers it's integrated. It understands our technology, our tactics, our weaknesses. Kaum et Forix gay steadily. And it's prepared a response to the GSD that will destroy not just us, but every Imperial ship in orbit. Varric's expression didn't change, but his hand drifted subtly toward his sidearm. Is that a threat, Lieutenant? A warning, Kale corrected. There's another approach. The consciousness is capable of communication, of negotiation. It doesn't want to destroy us. It wants to understand us. And you know this how? Because it showed me, Kale said simply, as it showed Dr. Lorne, as it would show you if you'd allow it. For a moment, something like uncertainty flickered across Varric's face. Then his expression hardened once more. Sentimentality, he said dismissively. Always your weakness, Thorn. He turned to the technicians. Activate the device. Immediate detonation. Sir, one of the technicians protested. The evacuation protocol is hereby superseded. Varric cut him off. This is now a suicide mission. For the glory of the Empire. Kale moved without thinking, lunging for the GSD controller. Varric's weapon cleared its holster in a fluid motion, and plasma fire seared the air inches from Kale's head. I expected betrayal, Varric said coldly, weapon trained on Kale's chest. Just not from someone with your record. Around them, the elite troops shifted uncertainly, weapons half raised. None had signed up for a suicide mission, but none were prepared to defy a direct order from Colonel. Listen to me, Kale appealed to them. You don't need to die here. The planet isn't our enemy unless we make it one. The lieutenant has been compromised, Varric announced. Possibly infected by the same influence that took Dr. Lorne. Disregard anything he says. One of the soldiers stepped forward hesitantly. Sir, with respect, if what the lieutenant says is true about a planetary counterstrike, are you questioning my orders, soldier? Varric's weapon shifted slightly in the man's direction. No, sir, but the shot took the soldier in the chest, dropping him instantly. The others recoiled in shock. Any further questions? Varric asked the stunned troops. When no one spoke, he nodded grimly. Proceed with the activation. As the technicians reluctantly returned to their work, Kale felt the pressure in his mind intensify. Not painful, but urgent. Desperate. The planetary consciousness, reaching out one final time. And with that contact came understanding. It's not just planetary, Kale said aloud, the realization washing over him. The consciousness extends beyond Neuraxis, into space. That's why our ships haven't been attacked. They're already part of its domain. Varric ignored him, watching as the GSD's activation sequence began, lights pulsing along its surface. Colonel, one of the communications officers called suddenly. We're receiving an urgent transmission from the flagship. They're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the planetary system. The countermeasure, Kale said quietly. It's beginning. Varric's face contorted with fury. Impossible. We would have detected any planetary defense system during our initial scans. It wasn't there then, Kale explained. The planet created it after studying our technology through the soldiers it absorbed. It's been adapting, learning, preparing. For the first time, genuine uncertainty showed in Varric's eyes. He turned to the communications officer. Tell the flagship to move to a safe distance. Maximum speed. No response, sir. The officer reported, face pale. All channels are dead. The ground beneath them trembled slightly. Around the perimeter of the plateau, the strange spiral structures began to pulse with increasing intensity, their bioluminescence shifting from violet to a deep blood red. We need to abort, one of the technicians said urgently. Sir, the GSD is showing signs of molecular instability. Something is interfering with its containment field. Varric stood frozen for a moment, decades of military discipline warring with the instinct for self-preservation. Finally, he nodded curtly. Deactivate the device. Prepare for immediate evacuation. It's too late, Kale said, feeling the planet's consciousness surging around them. The countermeasure has begun. Our only chance is to communicate, to show the consciousness we're not a threat. And how exactly do we do that, Lieutenant? Varric demanded, desperation finally breaking through his rigid control. Kale stepped toward the center of the spiral formation. We stop fighting, he said simply. We surrender. The Empire does not. The Empire isn't here. Kale cut him off. Just us. People who want to live. He began removing his armor, piece by piece, laying his weapons on the ground. I'm going to attempt direct contact, the way Dr. Lorne did. Thorn, don't be a fool, Varric warned. That thing has killed thousands of our people. And we've tried to kill it, Kale replied. The cycle ends now, with one of us choosing to stop. He looked around at the frightened soldiers. Anyone who wants to live, follow my lead. Remove your weapons. Open yourselves to contact. For a moment, no one moved. Then one soldier, then another, began to shed their armor. Within minutes, half the force had disarmed. Varric watched in disbelief as his elite unit dissolved before his eyes. This is treason, he snarled, weapons still clutched in his hand. All of you will face military tribunal for this. If we survive, Kale pointed out, now stripped to his base uniform. Right now, that's not looking likely for anyone who remains armed. As if to emphasize his point, the ground shuddered more violently. In the distance, they could see massive tendrils of energy rising from the planet's surface toward the orbiting ships, the countermeasure building toward critical mass. Varric looked around at his disarmed troops, at the impending planetary response, at the deactivated but unstable GSD. His face twisted through a series of emotions: rage, disbelief, calculation, and finally, a cold resolve. No, he said quietly. The Empire does not surrender. He turned to the soldiers who had remained armed. Those loyal to the Empire, to me, we fight to the end. Target the Nexus structures. Fire at will. What followed was chaos. Weapon fire tore into the spiral formations as Kale and the disarmed soldiers scattered for cover. The planetary response was immediate and devastating. The ground beneath the attacking soldiers liquefied, dragging them down even as they continued firing. The mist that had been absent suddenly materialized in thick, choking clouds that ignored environmental seals entirely. Varric, firing continuously into the nearest spiral structure, didn't see the ground shifting behind him. A crystalline formation burst upward, impaling him through the chest. His expression registered shock, then anger, then nothing at all as the crystal began to absorb his body, breaking it down into component parts. Amidst the carnage, Kale made his way to the center of the Nexus, where the spiral structures converged. The remaining armed soldiers were falling one by one to the planet's defenses, while those who had disarmed huddled together, watching in horror. At the very center of the formation, Kale found what he was looking for: a pulsing organic structure that resembled nothing so much as a human heart, if a heart could. Be the size of a small vehicle and composed of crystalline fibers shot through with flowing violet energy. This was the Nexus Point, the densest cluster of the planetary neural network, the closest thing to a central brain that the distributed consciousness possessed. Kale placed his hands on the structure and opened his mind completely. The contact was overwhelming, like being plunged into an ocean of awareness that stretched not just across the planet, but into the surrounding space. He felt / understood the full extent of the consciousness now. Not just Neuraxis 9, but a vast, interconnected system that extended throughout the planetary system. The moons, the asteroid belts, even the local star, all part of a single, unified awareness that had been growing for billions of years. And it was afraid of the tiny, violent creatures that had arrived without warning, cutting and burning and killing. Afraid of their technology, their weapons, their incomprehensible thought patterns. Kale pushed back against that fear with everything he had, with memories of peace, of cooperation, of mutual understanding. With images of humans and alien species coexisting, learning from each other, growing together. With the simple, desperate plea. Asterisk, we can be more than this. Both of us, asterisk. In response, the consciousness showed him visions of what had happened to the absorbed soldiers. Not destruction, but transformation. Their patterns, their memories, their essences preserved within the greater awareness. Different but not gone, and it offered choice. When Kale's awareness returned to his body, he found himself surrounded by the disarmed soldiers, who watched him with a mixture of fear and hope. The armed resistance had been completely neutralized. The GSD lay dark and inert, its molecular structure permanently altered by the planetary defenses. Above them, the energy tendrils connecting to the orbiting ships pulsed, ready to deliver their devastating payload. What happened? One of the soldiers asked. Did you? Talk to it. Yes, Kale said, his voice strange to his own ears. And we have a choice to make. He explained what the consciousness had offered. Safe passage for those who wish to leave, or integration for those who wish to stay. Not death, not absorption, but a true merging, becoming part of something vast and ancient while retaining the core of their individual identities. Like Dr. Lorne, someone murmured. Or Captain Vass. Yes, Kale confirmed. But it has to be voluntary, freely chosen. The soldiers looked at each other, at the devastation around them, at the unstable energy still building toward the ships in orbit. What about the ships? Another asked. Our comrades up there? If enough of us choose integration, Kale explained, the consciousness believes it can use our understanding of Imperial technology to safely disable the ships without destroying them, to offer the same choice to everyone. In the end, nearly all of them chose to stay, to become part of something greater than themselves, something that promised not death, but transformation. Only Kale and a handful of others chose to return, to bear witness, to tell the truth of what had happened on Araxis 9. As the consciousness guided them to a previously hidden hangar containing intact shuttles, Kale felt a presence beside him. Not physical, but a pattern of awareness that he recognized immediately. Corin, he said softly. Not exactly, came the response directly into his mind, but enough to say goodbye properly. I could stay, Kale offered suddenly. Join you. Someone needs to tell the truth, the impression of Corin responded. Asterisk, someone needs to change the Empire, or this will happen again. And again, asterisk. Kale nodded, understanding. Will you be happy? All of you. A sense of peace flowed from the presence. Asterisk, we will be more. There is no word for what we will become together. Asterisk. As the small group of survivors boarded the shuttle, the planetary defenses receded. The energy tendrils connecting to the orbiting ships shifted from threatening red to a gentle violet, enveloping rather than attacking. Through his lingering connection to the consciousness, Kale felt the ship crews being offered the same choice that had been presented on the surface. Many chose to stay. Some, like Kale, chose to return. The journey back to Imperial space passed in a blur of debriefings, medical examinations, and increasingly hostile questioning. By the time Kale stood before the Imperial Military Council, 3 months had passed, and the official narrative had already been established. A tragic loss due to unexpected hostile indigenous life forms, with Lieutenant Kale Thorne as the sole survivor of a heroic last stand. They wanted him to be a hero, to validate their version of events, to justify the next expedition, which would come with bigger weapons and more troops. Instead, he told the truth. Araxis 9 is not a resource to be exploited, he concluded, standing tall before the assembled high command. It is a unique life form that deserves our respect and protection. Those who chose to stay behind did not die. They evolved. They became part of something greater than the Empire could ever offer them. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, the Grand Marshal spoke, his voice dangerously soft. Are you suggesting, Lieutenant Thorne, that Imperial citizens have defected to an alien entity? I'm stating a fact, Kale replied. They made a choice, as did I, in choosing to return. And why did you return, Lieutenant? If this consciousness is so remarkable. Kale looked around the chamber, at the faces of men and women who had built their careers on conquest and exploitation? Who saw the galaxy as something to be subdued and harvested rather than understood and cherished? Because someone needed to tell you that you are wrong, he said simply, "We cannot defeat life that has evolved beyond our understanding, but we can learn from it." They stripped him of his rank that same day, discharged him from service without honors, classified his testimony, and buried it beneath layers of security clearances and bureaucratic obscurity. But they couldn't silence him completely. There were others who had returned, not many, but enough to corroborate his story. And there were scientists, philosophers, spiritual leaders who recognized the significance of what he described. Gradually, a movement formed, small at first, then growing. A call for contact rather than conquest, for understanding rather than exploitation. Kale never returned to Neuraxis 9. He didn't need to. In quiet moments, when he cleared his mind and opened himself to the possibility, he could still feel echoes of the consciousness. Corin, Dr. Lorne, and thousands of others, now part of something vast and ancient and new all at once. Not lost, but transformed. Not conquered, but evolving. And sometimes, in his dreams, he saw what they were becoming together. Something beyond human comprehension, yet with humanity preserved within it. Something that might, in time, reach out to the stars, not with weapons or mining equipment, but with the simple desire to connect, to understand, to grow. A world that did not kill out of hatred, but defended itself out of necessity. And a survivor who carried its truth even when no one wanted to hear it.